Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia-Alabama Sports Live. How is everybody doing? I hope you had a great weekend. I didn't have a show on Friday. This is the first show of November. I can't believe it's already November. We've got so much to get into. This is episode 940. I'm going to talk about my weekend. We've got NFL reaction. We've got college football reaction. We've got NBA, MLS. We've got local stuff that's going on around Columbus. High school football, week 12 is in the books. I will have that on tomorrow's show. We have just got a great jam-packed show. But before I get into anything, I just want to say, this is episode 940, and I really have been blessed that I'm able to have a platform where I could speak my mind, talk sports. Look, I know tomorrow's election day. There's not going to be any sports going on. I'm actually hoping to get some best of shows for WQEE, which, by the way, I am on that radio station Monday through Friday from 2 to 3. And I know personally that there's just a lot of things that's going on in the world. And I think that sports has been a very good medium to forget politics, put aside your differences, and let's come together and talk sports. And tomorrow, it's going to be a big day in our country. And I highly recommend that if you haven't done so already, just go out and vote. And, I think that it does make a difference in whether political party you believe in. I just think that we should all be unified and come together for making this country a better place to live. And I'm really just fortunate that we do live in a country that we can choose which political party we are wanting to see to become the next president, because it's kind of cool that tomorrow is election day and we get to see that map of the United States light up in the different colors, red or blue. It's a lot of fun. I actually watch it like it's a sporting event because I think it's fascinating. I think that watching election coverage has really been a tradition for me, because my youngest was born on election day. And I remember that we were able to see which president got selected while my wife was in the delivery room. So without that being said, I think that we've had such a fantastic weekend. I didn't have a show Friday because, we did have a family obligation. But I actually had a pretty good weekend. As Saturday, I was pretty much out of pocket, because I was at a birthday party. Not a whole lot. I was still watching sports on my phone, but really wasn't fully invested in watching it like on the couch like I normally do on Saturdays. Sunday, I took part in the Courier Echo Latino newspaper and Georgia-Alabama Sports Live high school basketball media day at the Beck Center on the campus of St. Anne Pacelli. 7 hours of interviewing coaches and players. 16 high schools from around the area and Chattahoochee Valley Community College. Such a great event. Thrift Behringer, Chris Gates, Toygar Isla, myself, Corey Black, the former head basketball coach at Pacelli, now an analyst for Georgia-Alabama Sports Live. We had such a great time, and I'm looking forward to live streaming high school basketball this year. Sometime this week or next week, we are going to have our high school basketball preview show, and I'm going to try to see if I can try to get Kyle Sandy on the show. Sandy Spell, which is the most premier rankings and coverage when it comes to high school basketball in Georgia. Nobody does it better than Kyle Sandy. Definitely want to try to reach out to him. And only Colga was in the building, as that has been a very good social media platform on Instagram and on Facebook. And they have a lot of followers, and they cover just about every big event in Columbus. And we were just fortunate that they were there covering Media Day for Georgia-Alabama Sports Live for all the high schools in the Chattahoochee Valley. A lot to get into. I'm going to have my college football playoff projections. These teams just keep dropping, and I'm wondering what the threshold is going to be for college football. Like, can you get into the college playoff with 3 losses? I don't know. Can a one-loss Indiana jump a three-loss LSU? I mean, these are questions that are in my mind, but the only person that I actually rely on when it comes to this source and questions is Josh Pate. And I'm really looking forward to watching his show, especially Tuesday is going to be the first college football selection show, and that's going to run every Tuesday. We are going to treat it like an event, and I think it's fitting that the first one is on Election Day. Without further ado, I'm actually going to start the show with the NFL reaction show first, and then I'm going to go into college football. Falcons get the win over the Cowboys. I will get into that. For the college football reaction show, I do have an opinion on Carson Beck. I was very vocal and putting it on social media, especially when he threw those 2 picks in the first half against Florida, and Florida dominated that first half. As a Georgia fan, sometimes I will post something that is emotional. And yeah, I did say that he needed to get benched, but Georgia does get the win. Barely. I think if Florida didn't have a quarterback, I think that Georgia loses that game. I mean, I'm starting to get nervous with that game next week against Ole Miss. I'm starting to get nervous about that game. And by the way, next week, I'm not going to have a show on Friday because we are going out of town. It's Veterans Day weekend. Not going to have a show on Monday either. So I'm going to try to have some best of shows for Friday and Monday, and I will be back on the air on Tuesday like I always do. The Georgia Alabama Sports Live Facebook page and YouTube channel. I have my Sports Beat scoreboard show. Trying to get a special guest. I reached out to a pretty big personality in Atlanta, and I'm excited about this one. And I'm hoping to get him on. I'm hoping to get Jonathan Bam Rivers on the show tomorrow as I reached out to him. And I like to try to get the guests back. I think that, I kind of went away from trying to get guests on the show just because we've been so busy with Georgia Sports Live and then the coaches shows. But I would like to try to get the guests back and just talking sports because this is really a great time to be a sports fan. All right. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the games. We're going to start with the local team that we cover here in Georgia, the Atlanta Falcons. They get the win against the Dallas Cowboys. And I tell you what, I seriously thought that this could be a letdown game for the Atlanta Falcons, and it wasn't. And depending on what happens against the Buccaneers tonight and the Chiefs for Monday Night Football, the Falcons could have a hold on this division. They are now 6-3 on the season. I never thought that the Atlanta Falcons were in danger of losing this game. I thought that the Cowboys are one of the worst teams in football. And look, if you're a Cowboys fan and you still think the Cowboys are going to go to the Super Bowl, well, just listen to Skip Bayless, listen to Stephen A. Smith. I mean, they tell it like it is. The Dallas Cowboys, which Dak Prescott got hurt in this game, I didn't even think when the Falcons took that 27-13 lead that the Cowboys had a chance to come back. I mean, they went for it on 4th down a lot. They were aggressive. Kirk Cousins throws 3 touchdown passes. Drake London got hurt in the game. Hopefully he's going to be all right. But the Atlanta Falcons are 6-3. Even when the Cowboys got that touchdown, which, by the way, that was just an amazing grab. I mean, Rico Dowell just made an incredible catch. Dak Prescott had plenty of time to throw the football. That cut it to 14-10. But the Atlanta Falcons just did what they did. And I'll look at them right now. And they're 6-3. They take on the New Orleans Saints, which, by the way, they just fired Dennis Allen. The Saints are going backwards, and they have lost 7 straight. I think the Falcons win that game. I think the game against the Broncos is a winnable game. I think the Chargers game at home, that's their next home game, by the way, on December the 1st, is going to be one of those games where it could be tricky just because Jim Harbaugh has really been a difference maker for the Chargers, and they have a very good quarterback. The Vikings is going to be a very good game on December the 8th. I see them rattling off 2 straight wins against the Raiders and the Giants. And then the Commanders, that's going to be a game where I could see them losing, and then they end the season with the Carolina Panthers. So right now, because the Falcons are in first place, with a 6-3 record, and the next team behind them is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who could lose tonight and go 4-5 because they are playing the Chiefs. I think that the fact that the Falcons could have a 2-game lead, and it's actually a 3-game lead because they have the tiebreakers with the Buccaneers, it's looking like, barring a collapse, and I hate saying the word collapse, especially with Falcons fans, the Falcons are going to win this division and make the playoffs for the first time since 2017. And I'm here to say it's a team effort. It's not just Kirk Cousins throwing the 3 touchdown passes. It's actually the defense. Caden Ellis had a sack. I mean, you had Grady Jarrett with a sack. I mean, they sacked Dak Prescott 3 times. That is just unheard of for a Falcons team that hasn't really rushed the passer in most of their games. And it was nice to see that the Falcons defense were aggressive. They stepped up, but it's also a testament to the Cowboys being really bad. Let's go ahead and go around the NFL because I tell you what, I love some of these matchups. And on tomorrow's show, I'm going to have my top 10 like I do every Tuesday. Sometimes when I didn't have a show last Tuesday, I did it on Friday. My top 10 NFL teams, just like Colin Cowherd does on the herd hierarchy. To the Baltimore Ravens, who completely dismantled Denver Broncos 41-10. And now the Baltimore Ravens are 6-3. And they're half game behind the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are 6-2. I'll tell you what, I can't wait for that Ravens-Steelers matchup. Ravens are kind of topsy-turvy. They will lose to the Cleveland Browns, but, they turn around and they get a big win over the Denver Broncos. Lamar Jackson had just about a perfect passer rating. Derrick Henry with 2 rushing touchdowns. And I could say, is Derrick Henry the best free agent acquisition this year? It's close. Saquon Barkley with the Eagles. How about Kirk Cousins with the Falcons? I think those 3 players have had the biggest impact on their new team this season. And Baltimore has a short week. They will face the Cincinnati Bengals next Thursday night. How about those Washington Commanders? The Washington Commanders are 7-2 right now. They are in first place, but only by a half game. The Washington Commanders, they were playing a really bad Giants team, which Brian Daboll is on the hot seat. They obviously need a new quarterback. Jaden Daniels leads the Commanders to their best start since 1996. Jaden Daniels was efficient. Even though it was a day that the Commanders could not run the football, Jaden Daniels with 2 touchdown passes. Noah Brown was the leading receiver. Remember, he was the hero in the Hail Mary game against the Bears last week. And looking at the schedule, the Washington Commanders, they will take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm telling you, that needs to be flexed to the Sunday night game. The Steelers and the Commanders next week, sign me up for that. And then a Thursday night game on November the 14th as they will go to Lincoln Financial Field to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. That's going to be for the division, folks. The Commanders and the Eagles are definitely going to be playoff teams, but I think that the Commanders, they found their quarterback. Jay Daniels having a great year. He is going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, it's not a knock on Malik Neighbors. I mean, Malik Neighbors is having a good year for the Giants, but it's been Jaden Daniels' year. And it just tells you when you hit a home run on the quarterback, you don't have to pay him that much. The Commanders can go around and get pieces that can fit what the Commanders are trying to do. And I just love the fact that the Commanders finally found their quarterback. I mean, this has just been incredible, especially for this team that has not had a whole lot of success drafting top quarterbacks. But Jaden Daniels is really fit in for the Washington Commanders. The Detroit Lions might be the best team in the NFL. Yeah, I'm saying it, even over the Chiefs. Right now, the Lions are firing on all cylinders. Did you see Amon-Ra St. Brown's touchdown celebration? That might be one of the best NFL photos that I have ever seen. He makes a spectacular catch. Jared Goff is efficient. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery running the football well. And this was a game where I thought, well, they're going into Lambeau to face the Packers. This just tells you that the Lions are better than Green Bay, and they got hold of this division. 7-1. And I think that the Detroit Lions are going to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. They're a complete team. Even without Aiden Hutchinson, they are still a very complete team. Let's look at the schedule a little bit because it gets really easy when they have to face, after the Houston Texans. That's going to be a game on Sunday night. And I think that we keep that as the Sunday night game. I know I would love to see the Steelers and the Commanders flex to Sunday night. That's the Sunday night game. And then they go on, a 3-game stretch where they're facing the Jaguars, the Colts, and the Bears at home. And then they get the Green Bay Packers. Remember, they play the Bears on Thanksgiving. And then they play the Green Bay Packers on a Thursday night. And that's going to be a game where I think the Detroit Lions end up winning. Then they face the Bills. And then another tough game is going to be the 49ers. That's going to be on December the 30th on Monday Night Football. But I think that the Detroit Lions are the best team in the NFL. And I'm actually going to be bold saying it. And even better than the Kansas City Chiefs. Right now, the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills. Definitely the best team in the NFC. I mean, who's going to compete with the Detroit Lions in the NFC? The Eagles have a coach that they want to get rid of. Even though they're explosive offensively, Detroit can match their intensity. I think that the Commanders, with their record, I think they might sizzle down in the playoffs just because they're having such a great year. The Falcons? Do you think the Falcons are one of the best teams in the NFC? I mean, it sounds like it. The Cardinals are starting to just hit that peak and then probably can rattle off some big wins. Not a believer in the 49ers. The Buccaneers have way too many injuries. And I also think that the Vikings are a team that, even though Sam Darnold's having a great season, they might go down to earth, especially when they have to face some tough opponents. So congratulations, Detroit. Looks like you're going to end up representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. Titans got a big win. They needed this one. They ended up defeating the New England Patriots in overtime. This game was in Tennessee, and I think that the Tennessee Titans, even though they still need a quarterback, I wouldn't fire their coach just yet. It's only his first season. They go to 2-6. You got to check out that play where Drake May, the Tennessee Titans have a 17-10 lead. Drake May scrambles out of a sack and gets that touchdown when time expires. And it got sent to overtime, and, Tennessee got lucky, and they ended up winning the game in overtime. In fact, they ended up kicking a field goal. The Patriots could win it with a touchdown because they had the ball next in overtime. But Drake May ends up throwing an interception, and it was intercepted by Hooker. And so the Tennessee Titans do win. They are now 2-6. The Eagles are rolling. Saquon Barkley with that spin move getting out of a tackle. I thought that this was going to be a blowout because they were facing the Jaguars at home, by the way. The Eagles are not making it easy for Eagles fans. A win is a win, but they're not blowing out these teams. I mean, they were up 22-0, but Trevor Lawrence comes back, and then Trayvon Walker with a big fumble return. And then the Eagles end up getting that touchdown to go up 28-16. But after that fumble return, Eagles fans are starting to start. But Saquon Barkley just putting up fantasy numbers. I mean, 159 yards rushing. I think, in my opinion, with Derrick Henry, you have Kirk Cousins. Saquon Barkley has been the best free agent acquisition for an already explosive Philadelphia Eagles offense. My big knock on the Eagles was that their defense couldn't stop anybody. Well, when they're playing a bad team, sometimes, your defense gets the benefit of the doubt and they end up getting stops. All right, the Eagles are 6-2. They face the Cowboys next week. This is going to be a mismatch. The Cowboys are a very bad football team. I see the Eagles winning that game. That game against the Commanders on Thursday night, you talk about matchups on Thursday night that's been sleepers in the past. This is going to be must watch. I'm excited about that game against the Washington Commanders. They face the Rams on the road on Sunday Night Football on the 24th of November. I mean, the Rams are just a much different team with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. I mean, they look like a much different team and could be a playoff team in the NFC. But then, they face the Panthers. I think that's going to be a win. The Steelers is going to be a very interesting game, having to face the Commanders again. And because the Giants and the Cowboys are so bad this year, the Eagles could look at the schedule and say, well, this is going to be automatic 4 wins. The Eagles will get into the playoffs. I just don't know if situationally they are a good playoff team, especially with some of the decisions that Nick Sirianni has made. I mean, come on, you're up 28-16 and you end up going for 2. I mean, what's up with that? All right. Probably the most exciting game of the day was the Buffalo Bills. A walk-off, 61-yard field goal to win it. And look, I know that the Dolphins are struggling this year, but you got to give credit to Tyler Bass, who really, he's been struggling this year. But he's able to get a walk-off field goal when time expired, and the Bills 30-27 over the Dolphins. They are now 7-2 on the season. And I got to say, I mean, even though Josh Allen, he had 3 touchdown passes, the run game did not get going for the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are just starting to become a consistent team. And you look right now, I mean, they have won 4 straight games. Playing the Colts next week, that game against the Chiefs on CBS in 2 weeks, that's going to be a huge game. They're facing the 49ers on Sunday Night Football. They play the Lions, the Rams. They've got some huge games. This was a game they needed to win because they're going to be tested. There's going to be some games on the schedule that the Buffalo Bills, you could easily say they could be losses. All right, I'm going to run through these really quick. I know that I elaborated on some of these games. The Cincinnati Bengals beat the lowly Las Vegas Raiders, who ended up firing their offensive coordinator. The Bengals needed this win to bounce back. Got a big game Thursday night against the Baltimore Ravens, especially since the first time they played, the Ravens ended up beating them in overtime 41-38. The Sunday night game, Minnesota snaps a 2-game losing streak. Indianapolis Colts 21-13. I think the Colts kind of gave up on Anthony Richardson too soon. He only had 10 starts. I know that Joe Flacco is the veteran, but does Joe Flacco really give you the best chance to win? I think it's some of his, like, what Ryan Fitzpatrick was. Remember, he used to call him Fitzmagic, Nick Foles. Look, Joe Flacco might be the best backup quarterback in the league, but he's almost 40 years old. He is a backup quarterback now. Look, he led the Ravens to a Super Bowl win. I get that. He did. Once he got the big contract, the Ravens weren't as good anymore, and he just doesn't have that moxie like he did when he won a Super Bowl. Still a decent backup quarterback, but I think the Magic's gonna run out for Indy, and it ran out Sunday night. Sam Darnold with 3 touchdown passes. Vikings get back on track. They needed this win. Something wrong with Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. I think that they are starting to go backwards after giving up that Hail Mary and losing to the Commanders last week. I think that the Bears are done. I think this coaching staff is probably going to get fired. I wasn't a believer in Matt Eberflus. I think having a defensive-minded coach is really going to hurt your rookie quarterback that he's running for his life. The Bears don't have an offensive line. They didn't get the run game going. I mean, you are asking your rookie quarterback to pass the ball 41 times. Look, I know he didn't have any interceptions, but you only scored 9 points. The Cardinals are now 5-4. They were off to a slow start, and then all of a sudden, they're turning the corner. And then that win against the 49ers was not a fluke. The Cardinals are a very good team, and they are now 5-4 on the season and in first place in the NFC West. I think that the Cardinals are back to when Kyler Murray was an MVP candidate a couple of years ago when the Cardinals made the playoffs. This is going to be a tight division, but I think that the Arizona Cardinals getting a big win. Speaking of the NFC West, the Rams get a big 26-20 overtime win over the Seahawks. I can't believe the Seahawks started, and then all of a sudden they have gone backwards. They are now 4-5. Rams are now 4-4. DeMarcus Robinson, an incredible catch in overtime, and the Rams were able to win the game. Jackson Smith and Jigba had a very good game for the Seattle Seahawks with 180 yards receiving with 2 touchdowns. But Geno Smith throws 3 picks. That's not going to get it done if you are the Seahawks. The Rams are now 4-4. Remember, they beat the 49ers. They got the tiebreaker with the 49ers. They are currently in second place in the NFC West. So I think the 49ers giving up those leads against the Rams and the Cardinals might come back to haunt them if they want to try to win this division, which, by the way, it is a winnable division. But right now, on the top of the division is the Cardinals and the Rams. All right. You know, Jim Harbaugh, all he does is win everywhere he goes. You know that the Chargers have matched their win total from last year. They are now 5-3, and I think magic has run out for Jameis Winston. I know I hyped up Jameis Winston last week. Who wants to eat a W? Jameis Winston is going to lead the Browns to winning this game. Not so much. The Chargers 27-10 over the lowly Browns, and Justin Herbert throws 2 touchdown passes. The reason why I think Jim Harbaugh can be successful because he has a quarterback. Once the Chargers start getting their players back from injuries, I think the Chargers could compete in the AFC West with the Kansas City Chiefs. I know that they're 5-3 and the Chiefs are undefeated right now, but I think that the next time that the Chargers play the Chiefs, it's going to be in Kansas City. I think that the Chargers could challenge the Chiefs because when healthy, when the Chargers have all their players, Joey Bosa, Derwin James, Asante Samuel on the defense, when you have Joe Alt on the line, Rashawn Slater, Chargers can compete for a Super Bowl because that's how much of a believer I am in Jim Harbaugh. You look at teams that Jim Harbaugh has turned around in the NFL and in college. Stanford College, the 49ers in the NFL. First year as a member, the coach of the 49ers, 3, they go to the NFC Championship. He led the 49ers title games in his first 3 years with the 49ers, including a Super Bowl appearance. He is a great coach. And I think when it comes to combined college and the NFL, you got to put him up there with Jimmy Johnson, with Pete Carroll. He is going to be a Hall of Fame coach someday. I'm going to come out and say that. He's won a national championship with Michigan. He's probably going to win a Super Bowl, and he'll be in that threshold of coaches that have won national titles and Super Bowls. And by the way, Barry Switzer is in that group too, but I don't consider Barry Switzer a Hall of Fame NFL coach. He might have been a Hall of Fame college coach, taking the Oklahoma Sooners to the national title and winning it in 1985. And then 10 years later, he leads the Cowboys to the Super Bowl with pretty much Jimmy Johnson players. All right. Carolina, big win for Bryce Young. I mean, if you're a Bryce Young fan, you got to be happy that the Carolina Panthers were able to win this game. But the Saints were so fed up with rattling off 7 straight losses that they their coach Dennis Allen. Now the Panthers are 2-7. The Saints are 2-7. And Chuba Hubbard, 2 touchdown runs. He gets the go-ahead touchdown. It looked like the Saints were controlling this game for most of the day. Look, Derek Carr comes back from the injury, but I'm telling you, Saints look bad, and Alvin Kamara cannot save this team. They are snake bitten by injuries. Rashid Shaheed is out for the season. Chris Olave got banged up. I actually thought that this Saints team, when they started 2-0, and the way they were beating teams to start 2-0, they beat the Panthers 47-10, and then they beat the Cowboys 44-19. They had probably the best 2-0 start that I have ever seen. I put them top of my rankings in the NFL rankings. I even said on this show that Clint Kubiak is going to get a head coaching job. And then since then, they have gone backwards. And it has been awful, absolutely awful. Blowout losses by the Broncos and the Chargers. And then this 1-point loss to the Carolina Panthers. They play the Falcons next. Maybe they get a win against the Cleveland Browns because something's got to give because these two teams are awful. and they might even beat the Giants. But, they play the Rams, they play the Commanders, the Packers, and then the Buccaneers to wrap up the season. I think that Dennis Allen being fired, where do the New Orleans Saints go to when it comes to head coaches? There are some head coaches out there. Ben Johnson is going to be a hot candidate for Detroit. I think that they might try to go for Ben Johnson. Maybe they try to get Bill Belichick. Maybe John Gruden, because Derek Carr is the quarterback in New Orleans. Maybe the New Orleans Saints try to get John Gruden. I mean, there's some opportunities here for the New Orleans to try to pick up the next head coach, but I know they've got to be missing what Sean Payton meant to this New Orleans team. But it was that quarterback coach combo of Sean Payton and Drew Brees that were winning for an entire decade. And look, say what you want about the New Orleans Saints, whether you love them or hate them, but yeah, 4 straight playoff years where they had heartbreak and their season ended in heartbreak fashion. But the New Orleans Saints just completely devastated by injuries. All right, that was the NFL recap show, 30 minutes, like I always do. Let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, I'm going to have my college football recap show as you're watching the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. We'll be right back after this.
Introducing Gatorade Water. Alkaline and electrolyte infused for great taste. Gatorade Water, always in motion.
All right, welcome back to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And without further ado, it is time for my college football reaction show. So let's get to it. Georgia, Florida. Yeah, I watched this game a little bit on my phone while I was at a birthday party. And my thoughts on this game, I think Georgia's in trouble. I think that Carson Beck is going to literally cost Georgia a game this year, and Georgia might not go to the college football playoff because of that reason. And I'm serious. And look, they play Ole Miss next week in Oxford. Georgia is only a slight 2.5-point favorite because I think that Ole Miss has one of the most explosive offenses, and it's Lane Kiffin going up against Kirby Smart. Got time to preview this game later in the week. But what I saw from the Georgia Bulldogs and Carson Beck, who single-handedly almost lost the game for Georgia. He had an interception. Florida on the next play scores a touchdown. And then he throws another pick. Florida ends up kicking a field goal. Florida was up 10-3, and Georgia was able to kick a field goal to cut it to 10-6. But then Florida marched down. They kick a field goal. It's 13-6 at the half. I mean, what was Kirby Smart telling his players in that locker room? I tell you what, when it was 13-6, and then Georgia ends up giving the ball when, Florida ends up going 3 and out to start the second half. And what does Carson Beck do again? Oh, boy. He throws another interception. It seemed like, and this is when I put that post on social media. Once he threw that third interception, Georgia was down 13-6. Florida has the ball up 13-6. I started posting. I posted on social media, Carson Beck needs to get benched. I am standing by this post. Time for Gunnar Stockton to see what he's made of. Because Carson Beck, even though he brought Georgia back from that 28-0 deficit against Alabama, and then he led them to a touchdown drive to tie the game, Florida ends up giving up the ball again on a fumble, and then they get another touchdown, and then now it's 20-13. I don't care. I still think that Carson Beck is going to cost you games. He cannot play like this against Ole Miss next week. If he plays like this against Ole Miss, Georgia will lose the football game to Ole Miss. Look, if DJ Lagway doesn't get hurt in this game, Florida beats Georgia. I'm here to tell you, I think that the fact is that Florida was at their third string quarterback, and the Georgia defense knew that they weren't going to throw the football. So they put 7 in the box and they tried to stop the run. And Georgia gets the 34-20 victory over the Florida Gators. Kirby Smart is now 7-2 against Florida. Florida is actually the last team not named Alabama to beat Georgia. That was back in 2020. I thought that Florida could have won this game. This was just a poor performance by Carson Beck. I'm not a believer in Carson Beck just being efficient. He does have some bright spots. He's able to bring you back from a deficit, but Georgia doesn't have a deep threat. Etienne was out in this game. You had to rely on the freshman Nate Frazier. He made just a bonehead penalty after that touchdown with the game. I mean, come on. He's a young player. He'll learn, but luckily it did not hurt Georgia in a way like back in 2009. I remember when A.J. Green did an excessive celebration after a touchdown, and the 15 yards hurt Georgia because LSU scored and had a big kickoff return. I don't want to really go into that. That was a painful loss by Georgia back in 2009. But yeah, it was a good win because a win is a win. It was against one of your rivals. And so Florida, if they're 4-4, I still think they're playing hard. I still think they keep Billy Napier for one more season. But let's be honest, Florida is not going to go back to the years of Urban Meyer. That was a flash in the pants. Urban Meyer without Tim Tebow, it's about an 8-4 coach. I'm not kidding. I mean, you're not like I go through this with Alabama fans because they want to fire Kalen DeBoer. Florida fans want to fire like Dan Mullen, Jim McElvain, Will Muschamp. Nobody is ever going to be what Steve Spurrier was. And Urban Meyer had a good run because he had Tim Tebow. And I'm here to say that with full conviction that Urban Meyer was not the same coach without Tim Tebow, just like Jimbo Fisher's not the same coach without Jameis Winston. Sometimes it's a perfect marriage between a quarterback and a coach. And let's be honest here. It's hard to imagine Georgia winning a national championship without Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett might be one of the greatest college quarterbacks of all time. There's no question. And Carson Beck just makes a lot of mistakes. He's not a first-round pick, by the way. I think that he is plummeted in the draft stock when it comes to maybe a second-round pick. But, Georgia plays Ole Miss. I got time to talk about that game next week. Might be one of the worst Auburn losses in school history, and I'm not kidding. This was ugly. I can't believe you lose Vanderbilt at home? Seriously, what is going on with offense? Why couldn't they score? This was embarrassing. If you're an Auburn fan, you should be embarrassed right now. Auburn's 3-6. They got to win out if they want to go to a bowl game. Now I'm starting to think, is Hugh Freeze the right guy? Look, you got some players in the transfer portal. I mean, you decided to go with Peyton Thorne once again. Look, he didn't throw an interception, but they couldn't get the run game going. Remember when you started running Jarquez Hunter against Kentucky? What happened? Why didn't you run the football? Look, and Vanderbilt, Diego Pavea owns the state of Alabama. He does it to Auburn again. He did it against Auburn last year when he was with New Mexico State. I mean, this has just been awful. Like, where was the offense? I'm looking at the possessions. This is just mind-boggling. Punt, 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 turnover on downs. They do get the touchdown to tie it at 7. Punt, miss field goal, punt, miss field goal, and a fumble. There you go. Those are Auburn's offensive possessions. Are you kidding me? Yeah, Louisiana Monroe next week. And then I think that they might end up going 4-8. And I think that, what's funny? Hugh Freeze has got the same record as Brian Harsin. And you wanted to run out Brian Harsin. You only wanted to give him 2 years because you thought, he was a disaster of a coach. Take away what Hugh Freeze did at Ole Miss. Come on. There was some shady stuff going on at Ole Miss. I mean, you got Robert Nicondici. You got Laquan Treadwell. I mean, you got Laramie Tunzel. He had like a top 5 draft class, in the NFL. I mean, he had a great recruiting class, beat Alabama 2 years in a row. I mean, take that out. What is Hugh Freeze? I mean, he's not that great of a college coach. I mean, I've heard that he's a quarterback whisperer, but what's going on with Peyton Thorne? Why can't he get Peyton Thorne to be a pretty much a quarterback that can maybe throw the ball down the field? I mean, Vanderbilt's defense can't be this great. And in fact, that this was a road win for Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's now bowl eligible. I mean, if you're a Vanderbilt fan, you got to be excited about this. It was priceless to see the Auburn fans just with the gloom and doom look on their face after they knew they were going to lose this game. It was kind of funny to see, but at the same time, I kind of felt bad for Auburn fans. All right, going to run down these college football scores very quick because, I only got an hour show. But anyway, South Carolina, big win at home over Texas A&M. Does this knock Texas A&M out of the college football playoff? Well, I mean, I think if they beat Texas at the end of the year, they're going to the SEC championship, and the SEC championship automatically will get a college football playoff berth. That I believe. Tennessee still winning. They needed this win because, they have one loss. They are currently ranked number 7. And I think that with tough games against Georgia, I think that if they beat Vanderbilt, they're in the college football playoff. It doesn't really matter what they do against Georgia. So this is a big win. Miami still undefeated, still one of my favorites to win the ACC, probably going to win out. Cam Ward's probably going to win the Heisman. They were able to come back from a deficit against Duke. Ohio getting a big win over Penn State. I was watching this game, and Penn State was down 20-13. Ohio State ended up getting a big stop, and then they ended up running out the clock. This is a road game in Happy Valley, and now Ohio State is back in the conversation as playoff contender. They still got – I think that Indiana game, Horseshoe, is going to be huge because Indiana might be a college football playoff team. And I'm going to beat it like a dead horse. If Ryan Day loses to Michigan, he will be fired. He's not losing to Michigan. Michigan is just awful this year. They're not the same team. And that's a good transition because they ended up getting shellacked by Oregon 38-17. And Michigan is just, after winning a national championship, this is just the year later where everything's just going wrong. They've just lost too many good players from that national championship team. And they lost one of the best head coaches in college football. It's not a knock on Sharon Moore. I do think that Michigan they got to go back to the transfer portal. They got to get some good recruits in there if they want to get back to, the way they were under Jim Harbaugh the last couple of years. And I don't think it has anything to do with Connor Stallions. I really don't think so. I just think that now that Oregon in this conference, they're facing some really good opponents. And I think that Michigan probably going to go maybe 7-5 and go to a bowl game. I mean, that's really the goal right now. Huge upset. Louisville beating Clemson in Death Valley. I think that Clemson is no longer a college football playoff contender. This was a huge win by Louisville, by the way. And I will actually get into my rankings in just a bit. We needed to see more college football playoff scores. I don't have a whole lot. Those are the only graphics I have. So I'm going to run down some of the upsets in college football. I mean, Texas Tech ends up beating Iowa State 23-22. You also had Ole Miss end up getting a huge win over Arkansas. And that was a huge win because Jackson Dart ends up having 5 touchdown passes. Oh, man, what a great win for Ole Miss. 515 yards, breaking SEC records. Jordan Watkins, second most receiving yards in an SEC game. And get ready because that Ole Miss-Georgia game, it's going to be the 3:30 game because the Alabama-LSU is going to be the 7:30 game. That's going to be a fun afternoon of college football in the SEC. And we love the SEC because it just means more. Some of the other teams, Illinois ends up losing to Minnesota. They're 25-17. You got UCLA beating Nebraska 27-20. North Carolina is really just put the nail in the coffin on Florida State, 35-11. How about Georgia Southern getting a big come from behind win over South Alabama, 34-30. And then locally, we had West Georgia put up 88 on Lincoln, 88-12. And then Mercer ends up defeating East Tennessee State 37-21. Locally here in the Chattahoochee Valley, how about LaGrange College? 5-3 on the year, a 24-21 victory over Huntington College on the road. They are now 5-1 in the CCS, or the USA South, whatever conference you want to call it. And then they will be on the road taking on Belhaven next Saturday. They only have one more game on the schedule at home. That's going to be senior night, the home finale. They don't really have senior night in college football. I mean, come on, let's be honest. But that's going to be on the road now at home at Callaway Stadium, taking on Virginia Union. All right, the moment y'all been waiting for, because I'm almost about to approach my whole hour. I'm gonna probably have to do another show tomorrow, and you know I'm going to be trying to do another show tomorrow, especially since I'm going to have Jonathan Bam Rivers on the show. Let's get to it. My playoff prediction. I love doing this. Oregon is staying atop. They are the unanimous AP number one team. I think that it's not just the way they have been winning. It's just because Oregon has taken care of business. And I'm wondering, is there going to be a slip up in Oregon's future? Is there a game where I could put Oregon on upset alert? Well, I kind of had them on upset alert this time around because they had to go into the big house, but they get a huge win over Michigan. They have got Maryland at home. They're going to win that game. I think they beat Wisconsin on the road, and then they take on Washington at home. Oregon is going to go a perfect 12-0, getting ready for the Big Ten championship, where who knows, they might face Ohio State or they might face Indiana. I mean, I really don't. Right now, Indiana is 6-0. Ohio State's 4-1. I mean, they got the tiebreaker with Penn State. I think that Ohio State-Indiana game is really going to be the game that decides who goes to the Big Ten championship. And I think both Big Ten schools, the champion and the runner-up, are going to be in the college football playoff. I think that there are three teams that get into the college football playoff. As you could see in my projection, Oregon, Ohio State, and Indiana, they're all going to the college football playoff. I think that Indiana is, their one loss is probably going to be against Ohio State, but I think they beat everybody else on their schedule to go 11-1. And that's going to be enough to get into the college football playoff. I mean, you're telling me the committee's not going to keep their, you're telling me that they are going to leave a one-loss Big Ten team out of this college football playoff? They're not going to be putting a 3-loss LSU team over a 1-loss Indiana team. That's not going to happen. Because Iowa State lost, BYU is now my Big 12 favorite. And let's take a look at BYU and see what they've got left on the schedule. At Utah. That's right, Utah. Give me 2. I think that could be an upset for BYU. But if they're able to beat Utah, there's a good chance that BYU can go undefeated and represent Big 12 championship. It's going to be at night on ESPN, Utah, and then Kansas. They go on the road against Arizona State, and then they're hosting Houston at BYU. So looking at the Big 12, with Iowa State losing, Colorado is still got one loss in the Big 12. Could we see a Colorado BYU Big 12 championship? They do face Texas Tech next week. You know, they had a bye this week, facing Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. If they're able to beat Texas Tech, I think Colorado wins out, and they go to the Big 12 championship, where they're more than likely face BYU. And then, would you start being a believer in Coach Prime then? If he gets Colorado to the Big 12 championship, that would be huge for the ratings of college football, because we've got another separate audience. The national audience is captivated by Colorado. All right. Miami, the number 3 seed. I got Boise State still in it. Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, Notre Dame still in it. SMU, they're my new ACC team, and Clemson is out. Let's go through, and here's my quarterfinal predictions. Tennessee and Oregon, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Miami. And I got Texas and Oregon, Ohio State, and Georgia. And then my national championship prediction, a rematch from the regular game. Hopefully Will Howard slides this time with an extra second on the clock. Ohio State wins, and I think that if they don't win the national championship this year, the team that Ryan Day has, having Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator, and because of Georgia's struggles this year, I see them beating Oregon in a rematch. The reason why I have Ohio State beating Georgia, because I am not a believer that Carson Beck can go toe-to-toe with Will Howard and those weapons that Ohio State has with Jeremiah Smith. You got Emeka Ibuka as wide receivers, Quishon Junkins and Travion Henderson as your running backs. Ohio State has the best weapons in college football right now. And that's why I've got them winning the national championship. And Ryan Day can relax a little bit. He's not on the hot seat. In fact, I think that his seat is not very warm at all. Wow, that was a lot of fun. But we do have to wrap up the show. NBA talk. Atlanta Hawks get the big 126-111 victory over the New Orleans Pelicans. Jalen Johnson with 29 points. Look, the Pelicans did not have Zion Williamson or DeJounte Murray in this game. Both were out. How about the Five Stripes? Atlanta United wins game 2 over Inter Miami 2-1. Zandy Silva in extra time gets the go-ahead goal. I saw the highlights. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium has not been that rocking since Atlanta United won the Cup in 2018. That was just a great sight to see. They will have a game 3 winner take all next week. The number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference in the MLS playoffs, Inter Miami, is on the ropes. Can Atlanta United pull off the upset? What a great win. And then the River Dragons, they had a very good weekend, getting the 5-0 and 4-0 victories. The home opener had close to 3,700 fans. I know that was a little bit down because we had high school football games. Saturday's game had close to 4,000 fans. A great goaltending from Sammy Bernard and William Lavalier. And we also had Alexander Jimenov with 2 goals on Friday. The River Dragons are currently 3-0-0-1. They have the 1 overtime win, but they have the 3 wins in regulation. And they will travel to Baton Rouge November the 7th to take on the Zydeco of Baton Rouge. Their next home will be Saturday, November the 16th against their in-state rival, the Athens Rock Lobsters. And Columbus State Soccer continuing to roll 4-0 over South Carolina Beaufort as they are on the road taking on the University of Montevallo this Wednesday. They are now 15-0-1, and they are ranked 2nd in the NCAA. We got college basketball tonight. We've got Columbus State Cougars and Lady Cougars basketball. So much to get into. I will have a show tomorrow on Election Day. It will be a special show because there is a lot I have to get into that I did not be able to cover here on the show. Well, I want to thank everybody who has watched the show. Thank you for supporting the podcast. And I will be on tomorrow for the high school football scoreboard show as we are going to recap week 12 in high school football. And you can catch that on the Georgia Alabama Sports Live Facebook page and YouTube channel starting at noon. And I want to thank everybody that supported this show. I mean, 940 episodes. I mean, this wasn't done overnight. I had to, compile episodes for about 4.5 years. I mean, I started out with just an audio only podcast on Apple Podcasts for about 20 minutes. And it blossomed into, being on TikTok, being on Instagram. I mean, I know where all these kids are going. I mean, Facebook is kind of the thing of the past, and they are going to TikTok and Instagram. So I'm starting to branch over to those. And of course, you can catch me on YouTube. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I don't have a whole lot of subscribers. A lot of people don't even realize I'm on YouTube. People that I talk to in the community is like, oh, I'm on, I don't have a Facebook account, but I'm on YouTube, and I would love to check out your show. Absolutely. By the way, was rocking over the weekend. Big shout out to Big Woody and the Split. That was incredible. That place was packed, and we had a great time just going out to Kill Winds and the Midland Commons area. I mean, it was just great that downtown Midland has got a bunch of people, and they had a great time catching Big Woody and the Splinters, and they played some pretty good 80s music. All right, that's it. That's our show. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.